So just get the graphics on. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Photo Mish Mash. This one being broadcast live January 27th, 2021. Oh, we got some fun stuff to talk about. Shiny new gear. We're going to try not to spend the whole show on it, I promise. But when two things come out that are so shiny, and I use that in the most literal and figurative sense, we got to spend a little time talking about them. That is, of course, the Sony A1 and just today announced the Fuji GFX 100S. You got one camera, 50 megapixels for 6,500, and then this Fuji medium format, 102 megapixels for $6,000. He's like, wow, one seems like a lot better deal. Well, of course, they are very different cameras, but we're going to talk about that. Picking David Carr's brain a little bit about what do we expect now from Nikon, and of course we'll talk a little bit about what we expect next from Canon flagship mirrorless cameras, because clearly the Alpha 1 is in that category. Also, David, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming back and being on again. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, man. It's good to be back as always, and it feels a little like a small gathering today, just two of us, but we'll manage, right? So
you know what? Yep, that's right. Just you and I today, and there's just so much more room for activities. Look at all this room.
That's
we got
right.
around
Yeah,
us now.
That's
so,
right. Look
lots
at
of
this.
activities. Yeah.
Yeah, my screen space is running out. I need, the fewer the people, the better. So
yeah. And welcome to our chat room who is chiming in. Thank you so much for tuning in and watching us live. If you're watching us right now, it'd be wonderful if you give that thumbs up a click. That's really appreciated. And of course, David Carr, his social media information is right down below this video. So he is an Atlanta area photographer, family, portraits, headshots, weddings, a little bit of kind of all of that. You're a fantastic photographer.
Thank you.
You want to go see what he's up to, see what he's doing from day to day. It would be great to follow his Instagram. And we were talking just before the show. You got a video coming sometime soon?
yeah. So 2 weeks ago, I promised in the next couple of days I'll have a. I make serious efforts at this stuff, but I have this weird thing. I'm going to get vulnerable for just a second, but so there are times when I'm home alone, and it's a lot easier for me to just record something when I'm home alone, because I can kind of get loud and be, not that I get loud, but like I can just kind of free flow. But when people are walking around and I hear footsteps, I just feel like I'm self-conscious and I don't want to. So I put it off and I put it off, and then I finally get a moment alone, and then I can't get the words out of my mouth. I'm such a perfectionist, so I'm working on it though. I've got something I'm working on. I want to give you a video of my thoughts on Capture One, but obviously we can talk about that tonight as well. But I kind of wanted to give a little rundown of where I am, sort of 1 month in. So,
no, I think let's leave it at that. Let's tease that. If you first off, go subscribe. So David has some more kind of encouragement there. People, we want this video from you, David. So
yeah, that's cool.
We
can talk about it here too.
Well.
Yeah, okay. And we can talk about it here because I'm excited to kind of report on it. But I just thought today, I do have I'm kind of got a little following growing here. A couple hundred people, but I don't put a ton of effort into it. So I'm grateful for anybody that is following. But I figure people might want to know what my thoughts are on that, just as someone who is actually attempting to make a switch, and we'll just see where it goes.
Yeah. So I like you went the economical way. So this kind of arises from our just kind of general frustration, and sometimes maybe frustration is too strong a word. Just not loving the Lightroom, all the time. Feeling like at times it's a little laggy, and we definitely complained about it on this show a lot. So you switched to a different program. I went the more expensive route and switched to a different computer.
Well, there you go.
That was my goal.
Okay.
But not really, kind of. So this is my M1 Mac that arrived.
Oh, you got it. That's amazing.
A little while ago. I can't lift it too far because dongle hell. Well, actually, let's do this. Cue the 2001 Space Odyssey music.
Okay.
Because, I have to go solo too.
Yeah,
Sorry,
man.
Carr. Hang on a sec.
That's okay.
There we go. Look at this. What's all this going on here? So it's not great as far as dongle life goes. But so far, I'm really impressed with this M1 MacBook Air. I did get the Air. 16 gigs of RAM, I think 512 SSD in it.
Yeah.
And I got this because not because it's a replacement for my iMac. I hope to replace that with an M chip, whenever they come out later this year for the iMacs. But I got it. I wanted a good travel computer. And if you all remembered, and I will, when I do the actual video about this, I will have to kind of do that quick rewind to Steve, who, when I announced I was buying a little Dell, he was like, "You'll be back to the Mac soon enough." And he was 100% right.
Yeah.
It's a lot of me. I'm going to bash Windows a little bit when I talk about it, but it's really just kind of moving back and forth between two machines. Just even the keyboard shortcuts for some things you constantly find yourself, and it just kind of slows you down. I wanted something that was very comfortable and that worked seamlessly, and also I had enough Lightroom issues that I suspected it was running the type of drive that I did to be on cross-platform, and so eliminating that, and it seems better.
Good.
And what a lot of people I think are curious about is, well, how does Lightroom, which currently does not have a Silicon native app, how does it run? So far, really, really well.
Good.
Seamless.
Good.
It's great. And I have the Photoshop beta that is built for Silicon. Seems fine. And I also have the original Photoshop that runs through the translation app. And that also seems fine. One of them, I can't remember which one, has crashed once or twice. Not that I've lost anything. But yeah, there are some downsides, though. There are some downsides. But for a starting price of $1,000, these M1 Airs are pretty sweet travel machines. And they are completely silent. There's no fan in them at all. So I actually hope my audio quality is a little bit better right now, because I am streaming from the M1 Mac.
Oh,
this
fantastic.
is where it's running, and I don't know if you could see that yellow cord that was plugged in. That's the Ethernet jack into one of the dongles has an Ethernet jack, just so I have the kind of, I don't trust Wi-Fi when I'm streaming in acting as a streaming base.
Yeah. Sure.
So there's no fans running on my iMac right now because it's just sitting over here quietly, being slightly jealous of my new girlfriend.
What are the sizes they offer in the screen size on the Air?
The Air, so the Air is 13-inch, and I believe the MacBooks, which were just announced, are also 13. Not just announced, sorry, but at the same time as the Air.
Yeah, maybe 13, 16 or something.
We're also 13-inch. Why did I go with an Air over a MacBook? And it basically was price and weight. Although there isn't a huge weight difference, this really, for me, I don't need a powerhouse machine. I just need it to run Lightroom decently and be a great machine on the road.
Sure.
I really like to try to travel as light as possible as I add more stuff into my bag. But the rumors that we're getting very soon a 14 and a 16-inch MacBook, maybe with some pretty big redesigns and not having to do dongle hell as I am right now.
Yeah.
The Air only has 2 USB-C ports, and one of those you need for power. Battery life is great, but it's not that good, especially when you're running Lightroom.
Yeah,
that does suck it down. So that really means we really only have one free port when you're not charging. And for me, most of the time, that's enough. I have one external SSD plugged in, and I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's always a little bit of give and take when they take away all these ports, and I had the previous MacBook Pro that had the SSD drive built into it.
There's rumors that's going to come back.
It better. I mean, because that was like, well, I don't know if I shouldn't say it better, but I was like, man, that was like half the reason I bought that computer, and then they got rid of it. I'm convinced if Apple could get away with taking away the screen, they would, and they'd brag about how amazing it is. So.
Pure audio interface.
Yeah, exactly.
You navigate with your ears.
Did you see? I did just a little diversion. Did you ever see the video that the Onion did years ago on the MacBook? The MacBook wheel is what they called it. So instead of having a keyboard, it had a big wheel with like the old iPod. So it's like Sam here's spent the last 45 minutes typing this email. They were at some big computer electronics show, the MacBook wheel, and it's like you're sitting there typing an email. So. I wouldn't put it past them.
Yep. Yeah, so we'll see. And it's also interesting, there is the rumor that they'll bring back the SD card slot. I don't know. I kind of feel like, as you say, if Apple could get rid of the screen, they would. So I don't expect that they will bring that back, but who knows? Right about the time they do, it seems like a lot of the higher end cameras are starting to move away from SD cards, or at least partially. So
yeah, that's why I kind of wonder if they will. So
yeah, I don't know. All right. Let's dive right into Lightroom and do some editing of pictures. We didn't have a show last week, so pictures have built up. And just a reminder, folks, that we are trying to do this segment of the show just a little bit more speedy. I say that as I realize that I haven't allowed screen share through this yet. I might not be able to do it on this machine. Let me see. Yeah, that works. Let's go over to Lightroom.
All right.
There. Is that working?
Looks good to me.
Okay. Yep. All right. I gotta take I gotta solo this.
Sure.
And there we go. Because it is a little bit of a smaller screen, but I'm just curious. Again, feeling the bottom of this M1. It is barely warm to the touch. It's pretty impressive.
Amazing.
All right. So, and I saw Roy in chat said, thanks for helping my Apple shares go up a little bit more. You're welcome, Roy.
It's been a good week for Apple.
Yeah. And just a reminder, as Roy said a little bit earlier, if you've got a question, put a Q in the chat, and we'll add it to our Q&A. And answer those either as we go along or towards the end of the show. And I just want to say real quick, I put a call out for questions last week and got a fantastic bunch of questions. The first video answering the first group will come out tomorrow. So if you're not subscribed to this channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Obviously, the questions are specific to these people, but in the answers, I think I really tried hard to kind of give general information and advice that would apply to a much larger audience than that one single person asking the question. All right, let's dive in. We've got Robert's scenic mountain peak here with just a little bit of sun on it. I looked through these images already, and I'll say this. There's a lot of them where I'm like, that's just a really pretty image, and I'm not sure what else to say about it.
Yeah.
This falls into that category. I do think I would be curious about a 16:9 crop for a couple of reasons. One, this top band of clouds isn't doing too much for me, and there's this one little darker, I'll call it a hiccup, right there, that I don't, it just pulls my eye up there a little bit more than I'd like. And if we kind of come into a panorama, I want to find a spot, though. I'm watching the bottom because I love some of that slope of the land there, and I don't want to lose too much of it. I'm liking this less because I don't want to give up. Maybe right in there. Yeah. The only thing that I hesitate there is now we're a little close to the top there, but yeah, I'd let that go.
There's a 16:10 like default in there as well that sometimes I'll use to just to give me a little split the difference, So kind of give you a little more height without, because I do love with landscapes kind of a wider format. A lot of times it works really nicely. So
there's something about that as you were, Robert, as you were standing there, or if we imagine ourselves standing there, of course, it's a very wide, broad view for us, and printing it or showing it that way, I think kind of brings us into the image a little bit more. Yeah,
but it's a gorgeous image, and to me, this is one of those shots that you could stand there and look at this scene and say, man, that's gorgeous, and take a picture, and it could be dull. But the fact that there's this gorgeous light hitting those peaks, hitting those rocky cliffs and everything, it just, and then there's little bits of snow, and I mean, it looks like a painted picture to me. It just looks very, I don't know, everything looks intentional, and I even love the clouds. They're just, there's enough of them. I don't mind that there's a little bit of blue sky, just kind of peeking through. It's a very well balanced photo in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you've done a great job here, Robert. Maybe you could warm up the shadows a little bit, and I'm just noticing a teeniest little something down there that catches my eye that you could take out. But otherwise, I think you've done a great job, Robert.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to move on. Mike D, because I don't know how to say your last name. Don't. looks like don't. Submitted this shot.
Okay.
This feels Montana-ish. Now, I think what we got here, Mike, is that this kind of twisted pine tree in the foreground caught your eye, and you wanted to include it in this kind of landscape scene. Maybe you've listened to me talk about trying to find interesting foreground elements to anchor and give depth, and I say, yes, that is a great idea. But I'm not sure that this pine tree has enough interest, and or it feels a little tight to the edge to me.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. And I've seen you've done some cropping already. Thanks for sending in the D&G. I like when we can see that where you thought this should go. And I think you're on the right track. I might come in a little bit more so we don't have any of that other foreground tree unless you wanted more of it.
Mm-hmm.
More or less would be my vote. And that's kind of where, oh, I see. We also have some little kind of construction material down there in the bottom corner. That's also kind of how I feel about this guy. I wish we had just a little bit more of that over there, and maybe even the base of it. Although, again, there might have been something that you said, well, that would have looked horrible.
Yeah, it's if I could chime in on that, I mean, I do love when we put something in the foreground, and it looks like you've got pretty good sharpness across the board. I mean, you're at f8, you know. But I guess for me, when you're going to put something in the foreground, you want to make sure that it's really striking and I think beautiful, or just has a good flow to it, or something that is really eye-catching. And to me, this tree is kind of just gnarly. It's a little, the way it's shaped is just not, and that's not your fault, Mike. It's the way the tree was. But you know, you might, if you had a chance to move around, you might have found a tree that was a little more picturesque, a little more something that you know, that really catches the eye in a beautiful way. I just feel like the way this one is shaped and just kind of the way it's grown or whatever has happened to it, looks like it's been trimmed in a few spots. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It just isn't the most appealing tree to me.
It just doesn't have quite that. I agree with you exactly. It just doesn't quite have that character to be a really interesting anchor element, at least from this angle.
Yeah.
And I think that's true. Otherwise, I'd say I like where you've kind of let this landscape fall off into the distance. I like that you split that with a third, and it's a third sky and 2/3 landscape. I think those were all the right calls. But we need a tree with some character or real beauty to it. Sorry, tree. Sorry, Mike. All right, we're going to move on. Paul Anderson has picked up this guy, which he's shot this, and he's also another new owner, or will be soon, of the Sony A1, as he said in our community group. So congrats on that purchase, Paul. And I think that camera is going to suit you really well. We'll talk a little bit more about that camera being, you know, more than I think a lot of people need. But when I see your birds in flight shots and also just your wildlife shots in general, Paul, I think it's a good buy for you. This is a lovely image. For everything from the little bits of kind of mossiness on the branch to the position and angle of the bird and its neck and the negative space off to the right, the very soft fall off in the background, and even a fact that we have some color towards the top third of the background, but the bird is framed under that. And I don't know if that was intentional or not, Paul. I'm going to say it is. I just think this is a fantastic image. Do you, Carr, see anything you'd suggest for improvement?
I mean, no, it's Paul always, I think, submits such great work, and you can tell he has sort of mastery in photography, I feel. You know, Paul, you know what you're doing. You know how to deliver a well-edited, a well-shot, sharp photo. And so really, at this point, everything is subjective to me, because I think if I was editing this as my own, I'd probably just try a tighter crop where I just see the bird, although I like the negative space. I think you have options. So it's not right or wrong. It's just, I guess my personal taste is to come in tighter unless there's something really happening, you know, in the rest of the frame. But that's just a cropping thing. That has nothing to do with how you shot it, how you processed it. That's just a personal taste thing. So I think you've really done a great job. And I just, the gesture. See, that's one of the things that a lot of times gets overlooked in animal shots and even with shots of people is gesture. There's an interesting gesture here with this bird, the way it's kind of looking off, the neck is stretched, it's looking into that negative space. There are a lot of situations where somebody might shoot a photographically perfect image of a bird, but it's just not a very interesting moment for the bird, or you don't see the face, or you don't, or just something's just not right. And so this, I think you kind of nailed it. Very nice.
Yeah, I think so too. You know, I came in a little bit more, and the first thing I noticed as I cropped in was that blue eye is now really starting to pop for me, whereas I felt like in the wider shot that was missed. So I think that was a great call. And I came in just a teeny bit on the left because I feel like that makes the log come a little bit more symmetrically out of that corner. But very, very minor. Cool. Yeah. Thank you, Paul. All right, Mike has this shot. This is a really popular location here in the southwest corner of Washington State that I haven't been to yet. It's been on my list for a long time. You get these fantastic waves that spray up into the air with that lighthouse in the background. And I have seen a lot of these pictures because, of course, I'm in the groups that, you know, the Northwest Photographers Group and the Nature Photographers Group. And when the conditions are right, all of a sudden Facebook is flooded with a lot of these pictures. And Mike, this is a great one. It's really nice.
It's gorgeous. I think you caught the wave, obviously, at the best moment, or one of the best moments. You know, in looking at this one earlier, I would probably crop in a little bit from the left and get rid of that tree on the left. And I like the one that's kind of like, looks almost like a bare Christmas tree. But I kind of just feel like you don't really necessarily need the extra space on that side. Because again, the real action, the real centerpiece of this photo is that wave. And so really it just becomes about almost like a squint test and looking at where are all the curves in this image, where are the lines leading me. And I think what you did there, I think it's an improvement. But again, it's a minor thing because I've been saying this a lot lately. If you have a sharp photo that the subject is right and it's in the right place, and you've exposed it moderately well, you have something to work with. And you've done all that stuff. So now it's just like fine tuning. And again, it's just a matter of taste. You might like that extra tree, but nonetheless, you've done a great job here.
Yeah, I think this is really nice. I came in on all sides just so folks know, because once you crop out part of the virtual mat, then it looks a little funny. So I came on all sides. Being picky, we have just this little bit of intersection. So almost everything is framed within that hillside. Gosh, this is cool when you get in close too. I wonder if the shot that's a couple milliseconds before, if it could all be framed within and still has some of that interesting spray going on. It's such a minor thing though, so I'm not even sure it's worth it, but there's some really cool spots within this. So for folks to know, this is Cape Disappointment, and also I think it's fun to share the shutter speed in a situation like this. It's 1/800th of a second. So that really allows that freezing just about every single individual drop and spray of water, and the texture on that backside of that breaking wave is really cool.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah. We got a first-time image, I think, from Kim Granfield. Submitted this sunset shot from, I'm not sure where, but we have some gorgeous colors.
I know this. It's not Georgia. I can tell you that.
It's. You are probably. I'm willing to bet that you are correct. Yeah.
Unless, I've never seen that part of Georgia, so it's beautiful.
First thing I want to do. She's already cropped some. Okay, I think I want to go to that 16:9. I'm sorry to sound a little bit like a broken record, but there was a kind of after a certain point, the sky just didn't do too much for me, and so I wanted to bring in, and also some of that foreground was a little on the dark side. What do you feel? This has a very moody feel to it.
Yeah,
I'm
it
going
does.
to ruin that for a moment and see what we think if we warm it up a little bit more. Does it still have an interesting impact?
Well, you brightened it some, right? So it's
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to work with here in shadows and being subtle about the shadows. Yeah, I kind of like. I'm a sucker for purple in the right context.
Yeah.
And I think there's a way to pull out a little more detail in that, monolith of I don't even know if you call that a mountain at this point. I don't know what that is, but this rock structure. I mean, I think there's a little more detail to pull out without going to that place where it starts looking like an HDR image. You have to be really careful with that because you can get gimmicky really fast. And I think there's a lot to be said for a subdued amount of pulling out the detail, just enough. But it is a moody image, and I don't know.
Let's add a little texture and a little clarity. I might be overdoing it, but that's that's my excuse. I want to make sure it comes through on YouTube. So I painted on, I brushed on, and also anybody who's paying careful attention, I am doing this on this M1 MacBook Air, and it is running smoother than it does on my iMac over there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. So just warmed it up a little bit and brightened it a little bit, add a little texture clarity and a little bit of dehaze. Yeah. And I think what we start to see there is, as you said, we start to really draw out some of the texture in that rock.
Yeah. Do me a favor. Tanya had a good suggestion here to crop out like the bottom, that little bottom row of kind of grassy stuff. Like, I'm wondering how it will look to just, and you may just go a freeform crop here. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I wonder how that's going to look.
I think that looks pretty nice.
Yeah. It's uniform in the foreground. It gets rid of another element of, I think that's looking really nice.
Yeah, what we have now, great suggestion, Tanya. Thanks for catching that, David. We've got this kind of little valley that leads us right up to our mountain. This is a nice spot. And again, Kim, this is first time submitting, and for anybody first time watching, again, when we crop this way, we're not suggesting that you shoot a giant wide shot every time you're out there in a landscape, bring it back and crop it down to a really small. We're giving you kind of ideas for how to shoot this in the future if you ever get back to the scene.
Yeah.
Now, Kim had this local area adjustment, a graduated filter for the sky. I just took it a little bit further. I just pushed it a little warmer, a little bit more red in the tint, and I think that brought out some nice colors in the sky. And you could even erase some of that action away from the monolith itself, so that it was still maybe not catching as much color as the sky and stands out apart. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, it's
nice.
It's gorgeous.
Really nice. Kelly Mitchell, she's got a lot of sleepy geese.
Yeah. I love this.
Yeah. It has a very peaceful feeling to it. It's pretty wild. Usually geese are a little nervous, and you at least got a couple of them that are supposed to be on guard. These guys.
I actually saw a meme today that said, geese wake up, what did they say? And geese wake up and choose violence. Something like that. And I was like, yeah, that's usually pretty true, but these are looking pretty subdued, pretty chilled out. So, but I think I'm usually a sucker for light, like really cool light play, and there is that thing kind of going on through the middle of this image.
Yeah. I cropped out inadvertently your watermark, but really it was this out of focus guy just peeking up off the frame. I mean, there was enough of him to know that he's just another goose, but he's so out of focus and so dark that I'd like to get rid of him. And I almost wonder, could we go one more?
Yeah, I was kind of wondering that too. It's tricky when you have something like this that's repeating all over the place, and you have to cut some of them off, on the frame. You can get really creative with Photoshop and remove any of these that are riding on the frame, and it'll look perfectly framed, but it takes some time and some prowess. But
Yeah, I think there is a value in having a little bit more leading foreground, but I'd like it to either be a little bit more in focus or a little bit less, goose head poking up here or there. But
Yeah.
the what draws you into this image, I just want to make sure everybody knows and sees it, is that shaft of light coming across and illuminating some of those guys. I think is really nice.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What happens if we? Well, actually, I think I like it a little cooler because that really makes that shaft of light stand apart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Cool. Thank you, Kelly. Eric Anderson has gone black and white. And,
Oh, man.
yeah, quite lovely.
Yeah. That's
Is this water over here to this? Yes. So kind of
Okay.
at the edge of the, some kind of body of water. We've got a little rain coming down over there. And as you can see when I zoom in, definitely a little bit grainy off in the distance, but that's fine. And the detail and the crispness and structure in the grass, they look lovely.
Yeah, the nice job on that grass, like if you dodged and burned or upped the clarity on it or whatever you did, I think I'm wondering, is the horizon tilted a little?
That's a good
Or
question.
or is it just me? Because it's hard for me to tell on the screen. So
It does look a little like this line. And so let's take the crop tool, and then everybody remember you can get the angle tool and draw it along the line that should be straight. And it does feel like it's a little closer to that. Oh, let's back up. Yeah.
I mean, it's a minor thing, but really watch those horizons because it's part of it. And sometimes you won't even realize that it's that way, but there might be something that feels off, and sometimes that's what it is.
And as I look over this scene here, I'm reminded of David and Allie whenever teaching. They said one of their great tips and easy tips to remember is squint your eye at the image for a moment, and anything that's kind of bright or dark that catches your eye when you're squinting, you probably want to work with. And that little slice of very dark further hill, I think it's just really under the darker cloud here and here.
Yeah.
And there's just the teeniest little thing right there. I think those could warrant a little bit of work just to bring them up so that it's not a solid dark. Otherwise, though, I'm in love with those grasses.
It's awesome. I mean, this is like if you go to lights out mode and just look at this as a frame. I mean, it's like you could really see this hanging on the wall and being like a beautiful print. And it's just great.
Yeah.
It's simple too. It's not like there's a lot going on. It's just a simple, repetitive element of grass through there, and I really like it.
Yep. I think actually, if you think, in a lot of ways, a lot of our images that we've oohed and awed over today have been quite simple, and that's a great lesson that we've talked about before, but bears repeating as often as we can.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Douglas has this gorgeous fall reflection. And typically we say avoid splitting your horizon perfectly, but in a reflection case, I think you can throw that rule out the window often.
Yeah.
And you've already done the job of gone to a custom crop. This is a quite long, but it nicely illustrates that you should crop to whatever tells the story best. And I think that crop was great.
It's gorgeous. I mean, and hats off for not trying to include the sky or the reflection of the sky, because you just don't need it. The whole feature of this image is those colors and that reflection. And again, you've simplified a complex scene, and sometimes that's what it takes.
Yep. Very nice. I can imagine this as a very large print, on a prominent wall in your house, Doug.
Yeah, it's cool. Gorgeous.
Yeah. All right, Kevin has this gorgeous Lake Tahoe sunset.
Man.
Really nice.
Yes.
Two things that jump out at me, though, and I'd say Steve, who's not here, obviously, he's our virtual matte king. I feel like he has an expertise level with virtual mattes, but like we talk about, people having our voices in their head, reminding them and suggesting things to them while they're out shooting. I think Steve would say that this stroke line, the kind of accent color that you have chosen there, Kevin, it works, but it's a little heavier than I would like.
Yeah,
I think
I
we
agree.
should keep that really subtle. Subtle is the name of the game.
Yeah, and I kind of wonder. It's a tough call because I kind of wonder if the image is just a hair oversaturated. I'm a sucker for color. I love good color. And it may be that stroke line that's kind of giving me that.
Yeah.
I don't know. And that might be just a personal preference thing. It just got to be careful on the saturation sometimes.
Yeah. I think it's still a gorgeous shot, even bringing it down -15. So then that leads me to agree with you that you could bring it down a little bit.
Yeah, I think just a hair.
Yeah. And then one other thing I'm noticing, Kevin, is I think maybe a little bit of editing. We feel like we have a little bit of glow behind these trees. I don't think that was a natural atmospheric issue. So you want to kind of want to make sure that that's in line with that dark hillside back there. But I think your composition here is really nice.
It is.
And the crop you've chosen for this works really well.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Cool spot. All right. Thank you, everybody who submitted. There were a couple more duplicates from other people. So if you had sent something in and you wanted us to get back to those, just send them in again. And next show, we will get them again. So thanks everybody who submitted. If you're watching this show and you would like to submit an image in the future and you're not a pen member, if you're a pen member, it's really easy. There's a link, you know it, you go to it, you drop your image in, and we take some time to give you some feedback on your images. And again, I think our feedback is designed in a way to help you, help others watching, and kind of inform how you should shoot when you're out in the field again. That's our goal, at least. But if you're not a pen member watching this, you can go to photorec.tv/pen. We're continuing our special for your first year. It is just $24 for your first year. You get access to this show to be able to submit images. You get a fantastic community. Many of them are in the chat, and they've been suggesting great feedback on these images as well. We didn't even mention Brian Scanlon talked a little bit about painting with light back with Kim's picture, which I think would have been a fantastic suggestion there as well. And you get access to hundreds of hours of videos and new content and articles each week. I've written about circular polarizers and done videos about circular polarizers, but for last week's article that I released, or this week, sorry, went out Tuesday, I kind of took all of the knowledge I had together and put it in one article. And I'll just let people behind the scenes for a second. Here's how it went. I had 2 different articles I wanted to write. And then as I started to look at my schedule, I knew Sony was announcing something. I hadn't been clued in exactly what, but I thought it was going to be, a new camera. I thought, I don't have time for that other long article, so let me do just this quick one about circular polarizers. And I'm not a fast writer, so it was like 4 hours later that I was like, I'm done. All done.
That would be me. That's I'm with you.
So, but I'm really happy with how it turned out. So, and I've gotten some good feedback from folks. So if you are a pen member, you should have that in your inbox. You get a new article each week, and you get a new video each week. And we've got some exciting news coming too that I'll just kind of hint. We have some guest contributors. So I'm really proud of everything that we've shared out with you, but I know there's a lot more awesome voices with expertise in a bunch of different areas that we don't even touch. And I'm excited to start hearing from those people in the coming weeks and months as well. So pen members, keep an eye out for that email. Again, if you're not a pen member, it really is a fantastic deal. Photorec.tv/pen. If it doesn't show up as $24 when you click through that link, just email me and I will make it right. It's been a shaky coupon code that sometimes just magically vanishes. Those kind of fun things.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay. Let's start with the most recent first. Let's talk a little bit about the Fuji GFX 100S. DP Review has their initial review up. Let's use that to look at a few pictures. Let's see, where do I want to do that? Let's see, I got 2 computers. What do I want to do? I want to share over here somehow. How did I just do this? Over here. And yes. And there. There we go. All right.
There it is.
So, what's the big deal? Of course, 100 megapixels. There's been other cameras with 100 megapixels, but at that price point, this is a medium format camera, so that means you have a very large sensor. But despite the fact that it's a medium format camera, it weighs less than a 5D Mark IV. It weighs less than the Panasonic SR1, which are both just full frame. Ha, just. It sounds funny to say that.
Yeah.
Not only is it 100 megapixels, but this sensor is now stabilized, image stabilized sensor. We have that kind of fun, funky, articulating screen to a point that Fuji has used on their X-T4 and previous cameras. And speaking of the X-T4, same batteries. So Fuji is kind of in that unique position where most camera manufacturers have APS-C models, and then they kind of work you up and get you into full frame. Fuji just has their APS-C and then their medium format. They've decided to skip over full frame. They've gone all in. And I think it's working well for them. They have fairly small market share, but when they're putting out cameras that offer this much at just $6,000, which I realize is a lot of money, but we're talking about medium format. I mean, what did medium format cost 5 years ago, 4 years ago?
Yeah, it's. I mean, the X1D was like $10,000 when it came out, right?
Yeah, yep.
And that was like one of the first forays into like semi-affordable medium format, and then I guess Fuji followed up. But
that's right. Yeah. I think Fuji has made some really nice cameras. I know that both David McKay and Steve Skurge, who own Hasselblad's medium format cameras, they both tried out Fuji's prior, and I thought the Fuji was a better camera, but it doesn't have quite as kind of appeal as the Hasselblad or the name that the Hasselblad has. And also, I think ergonomically, the earlier Fujis weren't great, whereas the Hasselblad in hand felt like something amazing.
Yeah.
I think they've refined that. They've gotten a lot better, but they are packed with bells and whistles and are medium format and at $6,000.
Yeah.
So it'll be really exciting to see how this develops. It also does shoot 4K at 30p. I'm not sure how many people are buying a medium format and excited about video.
Yeah.
You know, probably about the same amount of people who buy full frame and say, I wish it didn't have video at all, you know. But it does allow the camera to be a little bit more versatile.
I guess, I mean, it's just funny how I feel like camera manufacturers have to include that, because it's just like, well, you don't want to be the one camera that doesn't have, or the one manufacturer that doesn't have video. But I mean, you might as well have 4K video on my coffee maker. It's just like, I'm not going to use this for video, but maybe some people will. I just can't imagine anybody who's serious about video. If you're spending $6,000 on a camera, you're probably not like, and you're a big video person, you're probably just not going to spend it on this. So I don't know. I'm cynical.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I love the e-ink display at the top. You know, improved autofocus system. I don't know. Brian Scanlon is in our community probably our most diehard and most knowledgeable Fuji member. Brian, shoot in the chat. I'd love to know what is it that ticks the boxes for you in this camera. He did mention that, you know, we've got 4 medium format cameras and 12 lenses that have been released in the last 4 years from Fuji. That's great innovation-wise. It's not so great if you're one of those owners of a previous model, because like the joke with Sony, Sony has slowed down, but it's like, yeah, buy that, and next month you got 6, you know, you got a new camera in 6 months, and you're going to feel left out, plus the resale value goes down. But nobody should be buying cameras as an investment. Keep that in mind.
Yeah, it's true.
Oh, and John corrects me. Sorry, the 5D Mark IV is a little lighter. Maybe it's the 1DX Mark III then that I'm thinking of. Something Canon has that is only full frame is more is heavier than the Fuji. So Steve has an interesting idea that maybe manufacturers should license for features, so you don't have to pay for 4K, but it could be added later for a price. Let's not say added, let's say unlocked. That's an interesting idea, and in a way it's been done with Panasonic and Canon both through firmware updates that you could pay for to unlock certain video codecs and functions within video.
Okay.
So if you were, for me, like I happen to have the GH5 sitting right here because sometimes when I need to quick handheld video stuff, it's just great. I never bought those for me. the video features built into this were just fine. I didn't need to spend, I think it was $100 or $200 more for that. It's an interesting idea. It would be interesting to talk about that more. The idea that's been thrown around sometimes is the kind of more modular idea of a camera, where you kind of plug and play in the bits that you need that would work well for you.
Sure.
I like those ideas. I don't know the practicality ultimately how well they work, but
it's got to be it's got to be tricky. If I can just say, because we all know, any of us who are like gearheads, whenever the manufacturer comes out with a new piece of gear, you can just read all the complaints about what they didn't do, what they should have done, what it's missing, and how I would never shoot with that because it doesn't blah blah blah. But it's not like these camera manufacturers just have bottomless pit of cash and resources to just make whatever camera. It's got to be profitable. It's got to make sense for the market, and that's why they can't all do everything exactly the way you want them to do. But it's also why this new Sony that we're going to talk about in a minute is intriguing, and it is amazing to see some of these cameras that are kind of solving like almost every problem that I use the term problem loosely, you're starting to get to where it's like, man, I can't blame my gear for anything anymore. Not that I ever could, but there's like no reason to blame it any longer. So,
yeah. So it's interesting, and if you notice back, they also at the same time have released the GFX or GF 80 millimeter f1.7 lens. Yes, expensive, but again, partly I think our acceptance of the increasing cost of this gear. If you look at Canon mirrorless, high-end mirrorless RF lenses, Sony, Nikon, those prices aren't that far off.
No.
And so to be picking up medium format gear at these price points, and I have to also say that I think they've done a really nice job of realizing that they have made these more compact bodies, and in a lot of cases are designing lenses that work well with them from the standpoint of kind of balancing well, being a little bit smaller, a little bit more compact. Again, 5 years ago, not only were you paying at least $10,000, but you also probably had a much bigger backpack full of gear if you wanted to head out for some landscape photography. Yeah. All right, let's move on and talk a little bit about the Sony A1, and really just a little bit. And right up front, I said this in my video, but for me, and I pre-ordered this morning. And I felt a little like I was in line for tickets to my favorite band on earth. I'm not sure who that would be, but
that's awesome.
The fact that I can have basically what is a flagship level camera that can completely reliably shoot serious wildlife when I go on trips that require that, and then turn around and photograph a gorgeous landscape at 50 megapixels with Sony tried and true sensor with great dynamic range, but all in the same size package that I currently carry around. I mean, it's slightly larger, slightly heavier, but really just slightly. That to me was exciting and worth it. And I see this as a camera staying with me for a long time. And to be honest, there's part of me that feels a little guilty spending that much on any one thing. And also that probably is more camera than I need, but I really like the idea of knowing that if I'm missing shots out there, that it's all on me. It definitely wasn't my camera.
Yeah. So. Well, and I can say too, I mean, from having owned a flagship Nikon, that I don't know, there was a certain confidence that I had shooting with that with that D5 that. Again, it was, if I took bad shots, it's the thing I've joked about before, like, oh man, that camera must take great pictures. Yeah, it also takes bad pictures. It takes both. It doesn't matter what camera it is, but knowing that you're going to have like such a fast frame rate and a huge image file for cropping if you need it, the robustness of it, I'm sure it's going to be just a workhorse of a camera. Being at that flagship level, it's just, I mean, why not, man? I think you've earned it, Toby. So
Well, why not? Because I need to eat too. But no, this is where as a small business owner, I actually do need to separate. I do have, this is my business purchase. I didn't purchase this. I don't have to eat ramen for the next year.
yeah, exactly.
But figuratively, my business might have to eat ramen for the next year.
Right.
So, yeah, and a couple other things that really, stand out for me for this is 8K video. And a lot of people are coming back and saying, I don't even have a TV. No, I don't have a TV either. But I want to be able to shoot 8K video and zoom in to 4K and still have gorgeous stuff. We are going on trips with some fantastic wildlife in the next couple of years. And to be able to film some of that without taking a 600 millimeter lens and still getting in pretty close and tight is really exciting. And just that faster autofocus system with a faster frame rate is exciting. Also a little scary because you're going to be able to fill up some cards very, very quickly if you're not careful. And I saw some people that are like, it's interesting. I think there are people that haven't worked with the A9 at all. They're like, well, this is overpriced for a camera that can only do 10 frames per second mechanical. So just make sure we're all on the same page. 10 frames per second mechanical, you switch to electronic shutter, and you can do anywhere from 10 all the way up to 30. And why do you still need mechanical? This new A1 basically eliminates the need for mechanical. There used to be problems with silent shutter with distortion. Sony fixed that in the A9, and even with your fastest subjects, with that silent shutter, you don't have any distortion. There used to be problems with banding. That might still be an issue, but the A1 has a new feature that is supposed to eliminate that. Whether it'll do it completely, I don't know. So, and those are really the two kind of big ones where, a silent shutter wouldn't have worked for you in the past with older technology. But I think you got to leave that kind of thought paradigm behind and be like, I don't need to use its mechanical shutter hardly ever.
Yeah. Yeah, I could definitely see that. We're just moving further and further away from mechanical things in these cameras. And we got rid of the mirror, and now it's like anything else that's moving other than maybe a fan or something. It's just, or the apparatus in the lens, these silent motors that move. But other than that, it's just like the more you can get rid of all that stuff, it's kind of unbelievable where they've taken this. I'm not really surprised because Sony has been leading the way for quite a few years now in mirrorless technology and just cameras in general. And so this kind of is just in lockstep with where they've been headed, I think. It's just, but now they actually see these specs, it's pretty dang impressive. So I am curious, the dual CFS Express Type A SD card slot. So I don't know what that is. That literally just mean CF Express, or do you have a option of getting CF Express or SD?
You can run SD cards, old ones or new ones, SDHC or XC. I'm sure you're not going to be able to shoot at the highest burst rates or for very long, or the highest bit rates for videos on the older SD cards, but you can at least use them. And there is a new CF Express card, newish, that is Type A. That you could use too. That is a little bit faster, and it's like what you have in the Nikon. Yeah, but a little different.
So this has two slots though that are. Does it have one of each? Is that what it's saying, or is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
I'm dense.
So two. No, that's okay. There's two slots, and either slot can fit SD cards or the newer CF.
Oh,
Express
I see.
cards.
Okay. Wow, that's pretty amazing.
And the newer CF Express cards, did I link to them somewhere in here? They're pricey right now. So
yeah, I'm sure they are.
Yeah. So like 160 is $400.
Dang.
So we need those prices to come down. I'll be using my SD cards for a while, but that was another reason why. Whereas some people are like, you should have waited till the Canon R1 came out. I'm not switching. Switching isn't it's possible to do. It's certainly I did it 5-6 years ago as I kind of migrated from Canon to Sony, but for me, that's just not quite possible. And then, it's talking about buying different lenses and buying different memory cards and all of that stuff as well.
Yeah, sure.
So, yeah. There's a couple of questions. Oh, yeah, people are wondering, so 50 megapixels, what's the size going to be like? I know when I shot with the Sony A7R IV, That shoots 62 megapixels. And those files were up around, what, about 100 megabytes or so?
Yeah.
And this is where you get into whether or not you're shooting, and I don't have that chart with me. The other chart I made that's in my video, we've got a new format of RAW in here. So typically Sony has given us a compressed RAW or an uncompressed RAW. And now we have a lossless compressed RAW. So it's going to save you some file space, but you lose no image quality at all. Their chart, they say the image quality is good with the compressed RAW. I'll be honest, I've shot compressed RAW on my Sonys for years, and I don't see a difference between compressed RAW and uncompressed RAW. So that's another thing people are saying, oh, you only hit the 30 frames per second if you shoot compressed RAW. And that is accurate, but again, I don't have problems shooting compressed RAW. I've never seen an example where I can go, oh, that doesn't look as good as the uncompressed version. I am, we talked about this. You talked about this. You have a Nikon Z7, and it shoots how many megapixels?
It's like 47, 46, something like that.
Okay, yeah. And you also demoed the Sony A7R IV, which I just mentioned shoots 62 megapixels. So not a huge megapixel difference, but you remarked on how much slower they are in Lightroom to kind of come in and get processed, right?
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I thought I'd done something wrong. I remember sitting in the back of our bus in the frozen wasteland of Yellowstone last year, waiting for like 100 photos to load up, which is a lot of photos, but it's not like an insane amount.
No,
and I'm sitting back there.
Wedding.
Yeah, exactly. I loaded them up. I have a MacBook Pro that's fairly new. It's fast. And man, I mean, it was at least an hour for those to load up, and that was from the A7R IV. But then, I'm not saying the Z7 is like lightning fast, those files, but I'm not like I'm gonna go grab a bite to eat. I mean, it's pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
So
noticeably faster. I didn't realize it was a full hour. That does sound like something funky's going on. But I will just agree that in general, Lightroom does seem to struggle. I don't know if it's the unzipping, the compressed RAW, and this all happens behind the scenes. There's nothing you need to do. It doesn't. I don't have to do anything different from when I import Canon files or Sony files or Nikon files. But they do seem to take longer in Lightroom.
Yeah.
And I'm curious how this new lossless compression will work in Lightroom as well.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Kristen says, because she just bought the A7R IV, and she said it hasn't seemed to take as long to load for her. Again, there might have been a glitch or something, but I remember coming home from that trip and also trying to load photos and it taking the better part of a year. So I mean, I don't know. It's amazing going from 47 to 62 or whatever. Doesn't seem like a lot, but it's already a huge file. Now you're like increasing it by that much more. So I don't know.
Yeah. So Kristen says, what would you say is the comparison against the Sony A7R IV? I think the big ones are the improved autofocus, how much we need to get it in our hands and start testing, and also the fact that what was the other thing I was going to say? Well, up to 30 frames per second, whereas in the A7R IV, I think you are limited somewhere around 11, and that 11 does knock you down bit rate in RAW. So you usually do want to be closer to the 10 number, if I'm remembering correctly. But I said this when my A7R IV review, I felt like it was too much. It was more megapixels than I needed.
Yeah.
And I didn't see a huge enough autofocus improvement over the A7R III. I have seen other people that said for them and their shooting, the autofocus improvement was big. So it kind of really depends on what you're shooting and what you need to rely on. But I think that we're going to see a really significant improvement in this. I'm mostly thinking of those penguins when they're swimming and they come up out of the water for that like second and back in. I want a really good shot of that.
Yeah.
And this camera feels like it'll get it.
Well, every second you get 30 attempts at that. So You should be all right.
Yeah. That's right. 30. Steve points out there's no blackout on the A1 as well, so that inherits that kind of A9 system, whereas as you're firing these frames, you can still track your subject. Absolutely, Viewfinder stays. And the Viewfinder is the best on the market. Huge, almost 4 million dots of resolution, and
Wow.
it is a refresh rate of 240 hertz. So any of those people that are like, I don't like EVFs, I think they should try a higher end Viewfinder. And I think they're going to find it to be all of the benefits of an optical viewfinder with very few drawbacks.
Yes, I would imagine so.
Yeah, Brian, that's right. $6,000 penguin. If I come back with one amazing penguin shot and I sell it for $400, then I'd only need to sell 20 of them. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right. Let's so that was the A1. Clearly, Canon and Nikon should answer. Rumors of an R1 sometime this year. There's some out there comparing, like Northrup's video. I didn't watch it, but I saw his title is R5 versus the A1, and I have to say, in a lot of ways, the R5 holds strong against the A1 for less money. At the time, I was like, hey, this is an expensive camera. You definitely are plunking down a bit of cash, and especially when you start to add those RF lenses in. But honestly, now looking at the A1, it's still a strong camera. Yes, 8K video, some overheating issues, but firmware have definitely made that last longer and probably can give the Sony a bit of run for its money. And then I don't want to say more about video because I'm not strong in that about whether or not that internal RAW on the Canon. I see a lot of people don't love it. It's not really fun to work with, but it does give you that. So
Yeah.
I don't know. The R1 rumor is something like the 1DX3, but in a mirrorless form. The driver to that was really the Olympics, which, as far as I'm hearing, may be in jeopardy this year too. So, of course, the Olympics were supposed to be last summer, delayed because of the pandemic, and now scheduled for, I think, mid-July of this year. But there's starting to be rumors floating that they might be, I don't know, delayed another year or canceled entirely, which I feel so much for those athletes.
Gosh. Yeah.
But so without that, Canon might not feel like they need to push that R1 out as much and feel like their R5 is strong enough to compete against the A1. And then Nikon. Well, I haven't seen anything Nikon-wise. Carr, do you have any information?
No, I don't. I saw a kind of a artist rendering or something of a sort of a could-be kind of camera, and it was based on some rumors of a very similar camera to the Sony. I mean, I remember thinking, wow, like I think it was around 50 megapixels, and I think it was, or it might have been even like more. I don't really care, but it might have been more, and super high frame rate. But I would imagine that the Canon and the Nikon, whatever they come out with to answer this to Sony, they'll most likely will include the battery grip, where you can really turn it vertically and it's all one like chunky camera. And I liked that about my D5. I mean, it was a big, heavy camera. I've talked about this before, but I didn't get into mirrorless for smaller, lighter. I got into mirrorless because it was the new technology, and so sometimes things are smaller and lighter within the mirrorless world, and I love that. But I guarantee you, if a year from now they've got their answer to this Sony out, I'm going to be very interested in it. I just, I'm pretty loyal to Nikon just because I've grown to understand the system, and it just feels comfortable to me. But I'm seeing this Sony announcement, and I'm like, dang, man. Like, thanks a lot, Sony, for stealing everybody else's thunder, but that's what they do, right? And but it will be interesting to see. They've got to do something along those lines. I love that they came out with the Z6 II and the Z7 II. It's probably what they should have come out with to begin with, but they didn't. And I know Nikon's been skating on some thinner ice financially, fiscally, so it's probably harder for them to just dream as big as maybe Sony can at this point. But I do think I would imagine they'll hit a home run with whatever their serious pro level mirrorless camera is, because they're going to have to, because more and more people are switching to mirrorless. But it's those sports shooters, those ones who get paid by Getty and by that are having to just move quickly and deliver quickly, they're not ready to make that switch to mirrorless. And I understand why. But if they're offered something that gives them all the power and then some of their Pro body D6 or 1DX in the Canon, I think they're going to be hard pressed to want to just stick with a DSLR format. So we'll see.
Yeah. It seems like they need to go all in on the mirrorless, and I kind of feel like that's what they've been saying. But you're right. There are a lot of those sports photographers, and to be fair, I'm a Sony fan. I said in my video though, the ergonomics, I don't love it. It's good enough for me, but I don't love it. And I think a lot of people feel a lot more strongly negatively towards Sony Ergonomics than I do, especially those sports photographers that are walking around with big lenses, and they really appreciate that kind of bigger body and the integrated grip, as you mentioned, battery grip, because it balances better, and out on the field, it's better.
It also feels like just a serious piece of equipment. I mean, the D5 just felt like I could roll it down a mountain and then just pick it up and keep going. It was so tough. It felt, and it was heavy and bulky, but I didn't care. And the battery life was insane on it. I mean, the batteries are huge. So that will be another plus for any of these camera systems in that really pro level. When you're spending $6,500, you better hope the battery life is going to be something that you can write home about, because you don't want to be out there switching batteries any more than you have to, especially if you're out in the elements or in the middle of a professional game or something. You don't want to be having to switch batteries all the time. So
I agree. And that's and these big power hungry flagship level cameras are going to need some serious batteries, and so then they are going to be bigger. Or some magic technology that makes the batteries last longer. I think Sony's battery life is good, and I expect it will be good in the A1. On paper, it doesn't look great, but I think it's going to be much better than that.
Yeah, probably will be.
But still not at the level like you've mentioned, and Frank, our friend in Alaska, he's got the D5 or D4, and that battery is like half this size, and he goes out for a whole weekend in sub-zero weather, sub-zero Fahrenheit weather with no worries.
I bought a backup battery for the D5. I never used it as like, I'm running out of battery on this one. I would go shoot a wedding, and I never had to get the extra battery out. It was just there for security. But so that's pretty huge. I mean, that's been probably the hardest pill to swallow going into mirrorless. That and like some of the autofocus stuff, but is like, I got to switch this battery out more often now. So wow, big deal, but it's something.
Mirko says his 1DX battery lasts a full day, I think, of sports shooting, because he's talking about sports earlier. He says sports is not, mirrorless is not a way for sports till now. Mirko, I'm going to disagree, because the Sony A9, I have sports photographers, professional ones, that have adopted that and are very, very happy. So I think for a while Sony has done a good enough job, and in some of those cases, I know some of those early reviews of the A9 showed it beating the autofocus system. But that's just within Sony. I feel like Canon and Nikon only recently have got their autofocus up to a point where professional sports photographers will want to match. But I think everybody's there now, and it's exciting. It'll be exciting to see what these other flagship cameras, what they release. It just it's good for everybody. I don't think Canon would have, I don't think Sony would have put as much into the A1 as they did if the Canon R5 hadn't come out with 8K and a lot of different bells and whistles there. So yeah,
most definitely.
Great. All right, we're going to start to wrap up the show. Again, David Carr, I want to tease your channel. You've been using Capture One this year. It was kind of a goal of yours to try it out, move away from Lightroom a little bit. Just give us, and so you've got a video coming at some point. We're patient. No pressure. All right. You're not Steve. It's not like you need another Instagram, Steve. We always give him a hard time.
I did one last year.
But you're still thumbs up on Capture One, would you say?
I am. It's taking me more time to kind of get into, like, if I load a bunch of photos up to edit, they load quickly. I love the interface. I absolutely love the way everything looks. I don't know why everything just looks sharper and cleaner, and I just love the workspace. But I'm still getting used to some of there's some things that's missing that I didn't realize until, it's like one of those, you're in the middle of doing something you're used to doing in Lightroom, and then you're like, oh wait, I can't do that. Oh, I can't do that. So, and I, a couple of those things would be like, I use keyboard shortcuts a lot. That's a big thing for me. And I've just kind of memorized a lot of the keyboard shortcuts.
Yeah.
And so there's a couple of little squabbles I have. Like in Lightroom, I could hit the V key and it would give me a quick black and white. And sometimes I'd do that just to kind of like see, oh, yeah, would this look good black and white? And all I have to do is hit V and go, no, I don't like it black and white. Or, oh, maybe I'm onto something. And then I would process a black and white. So there's no shortcut for that, which is not a huge deal, but it's just one of the things that I'm getting used to. Another thing is brush presets, which I use a lot in my portraiture, especially. Like I'll brighten eyes with a brush preset. I'll whiten teeth with a brush preset. To my knowledge, there are none in Capture One. It's because it really emphasizes layers, like Photoshop. And I love layers, but in Lightroom, even though a local adjustment or a clone or healing brush adjustment in Lightroom, even though that technically is another layer, you don't think of it as a layer. You just think of it as a local adjustment. But under the surface, I think under the hood, it's kind of building layers. If I'm not mistaken, in Lightroom, it's kind of adding. It's doing what we would do in Photoshop, but it's just doing it under the radar. Whereas in Capture One, you really are adding if you're whitening the teeth, it's a layer, and that's great. But it's just I don't have like a quick brush I can go to. So if I have 15 headshots that need teeth whitening, I have to every time go adjust that brush. It's not a big deal. It just slows me down a little. But it's not, and I don't love the browser, and the grid view for like looking at all the photos is a little bit clunky, but none of those are deal breakers so far. Okay. So
all right.
Yeah. Good. I'll give you the full review.
We're looking forward to your full. Yeah. We're looking to that full review. That'll be exciting when we get that. All right. Yeah. I think that's good. Let's. There's a couple questions that we've answered. Actually, most of these as we are going along. Brian wants to know, what's the downside for a 50 megapixel with night photography, and let's make sure we clarify a full frame 50 megapixel, because if it was a medium format 50 megapixel, we'd be very excited. I think there are some downsides, but Sony has done such a good job. This is a backside illuminated sensor. It basically means that all of the wiring is underneath the sensor as opposed to kind of on it. And that allows the Sony chips to have the sensors to have just a little bit more room for their light collecting. That's a kind of a simplified way to explain it. I used the Sony A7R4 to shoot the night sky a bunch 2 years ago in Mongolia now, or I guess a year and a half-ish. And I was very happy with the shots. Would a lesser megapixel, similar sensor be less noisy? Yes. But it wasn't to a point where it was an issue for me. And I was pretty happy, especially as you downsize it a little bit like that. Lynn wants to know, what internet security software do you use? Lynn, this is a little out of our wheelhouse. And also, we're Mac here. And that's another thing that I really like about Mac. And maybe I shouldn't say this out loud, but I don't run any security software on it.
No, I don't either. I mean, there are a couple of things you can do, firewall and all that, but I've turned all that stuff off. It slows the computer down. So
yeah. And that was another thing when I had the Dell. It came pre-installed with McAfee, and it was always popping up, letting me know that it was running a scan or that I had stopped paying them, and I should start paying them again because things were going to get bad. If you're on a Windows machine, I think you should have something running, but I feel like Windows Defender. And there's a few other bits built into Windows that I think are good enough. So I would look in your Windows machine itself and just make sure that is turned on, and I think that is enough. But Roy might suggest some as well, because I know he's got a little bit more Windows experience than we do. So watch the chat for that. And last question for you, David, from Just Kyle. David, do you have a case or bag that you use to transport your light stands and umbrellas to location shoots?
Yeah, actually, I just answered, but I'll. I do. I use a 10. It says tent bag. It corrected me. Tenba is the brand, actually. And I use it. I don't love it because I have quite a bit of weight in there, and it's a big thing to lug around. So I'm going to try to get something with wheels pretty soon. Although I say that before every shoot, and I don't get it. But yeah, it is good to have something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
That's TENBA.
Yeah.
Good brand.
Yep. They make some great bags. They really do. So.
Yeah. Cool. All right. And Roy says to you, Lynn, Avast for the security suite. I've heard of them. Great. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate it. If you are still watching this show right now, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. That's a nice way to thank us for our time. If you're not a subscriber, I'd love it if you hit that subscribe button as well. You'll be notified of future videos. Well, actually, you have to hit the bell too, technically these days, to be notified, but it still might notify you. And David Carr, your Instagram is right down below. You should go follow him to see his beautiful headshots and other things that he's up to. And as we start to travel again, you'll be posting some of those gorgeous landscape photos as well. You just posted a memory from Tanzania, I think.
Yeah, I was there a year and a half ago, and love it.
Good memories.
Yeah.
So that information for David is right down below this video, and following him is a nice way to thank him for his time and expertise today. Chat room, thank you for hanging out. Really appreciate all your chats and questions and corrections. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. We'll see you again next week.